Alright, so in the last video we talked about arrays and we talked about using for loops and using some of the functionality you have for arrays. And in this video we're going to talk about prefabs and how we use them in diagram. Because there's some interesting things we do with prefabs in diagram with how we use them. So I'm going to get rid of this cube here. I'm going to start fresh for this so that we can make an interesting scenario to show you how prefabs are used and how we use them. What prefabs are basically a copying machine in Unity. They have functionality we make once, and we make a prefab of it so we don't have to do it over and over. So I'm going to make a cube here. I'm going to make a little scenario that we can use. Just simple things that we can do to show you the replication of the functionality with the diagram here. I am going to add a rigid body to this. So, well, first I'm going to add a diagram behavior to it so that we can, I need a diagram behavior to start doing things with this. And you can see it's just a fresh diagram behavior. It's got its start there. I haven't added any variables or events yet. But I need to kind of get some functionality going here. I have to add a few more things to get the functionality I wanted to showcase this to you. So I'm going to make a prefab folder so that we can get ready to start making prefabs. You don't have to do this, but I just like to organize things. So I'm going to right click on assets, create a folder and name it prefabs. And this is where I'm going to drag my prefabs into. You could drag them anywhere into the assets folder, but it's better to have them be a little bit organized. So what I'm going to do in this space is I'm going to get ready to do some functionality to show you why we would use prefabs. And to do this, I'm going to make another object here. I have this first cube here. I'm going to drag this up, and I'm going to make another cube. We're going to make the floor. We're going to make like ground for this. So I'm going to scale this out. Made another cube, hit R to get the scaling tool, scaled it out so that we can have something to fall on, because I'm going to add gravity. I'm going to add physics to this other cube. And I'm going to create a material real quick so that we can see a difference between. I don't want everything white. So I just made a material real quick called red. I'm going to drag it onto that cube. Now that I have this, I have a floor that I can fall onto. I'm going to name this floor so I don't get confused with what's going on here. Click in there, name it floor. And I'm going to add another component to this. All of these things on the side in the inspector are components. And I'm going to add, under physics, I'm going to add a rigid body. And rigid body gives this thing physics, so it'll add gravity to it. If we can click this, you'll watch, and that thing will fall. If I didn't have the rigid body on that, I'll remove the component. You'll see that it'll just sit there. But I want to do something with physics here. I actually want to add a force to this. So I'm going to have to add a rigid body component to this so that I keep physics on this, so that I could show you some of the functionality of what we can do with physics. And then when I make this a prefab, we'll replicate that functionality in here. But I need to talk to this rigid body component. All of these are components, and I want to talk to this one. I could talk to any of them, but to be able to talk to this, I need to make a variable inside of my diagram to get access to speak to it. And so I'm going to make a variable, and the type of variable I want to make is rigid body, not the name of it. The type I want is rigid body. There it is, rigid body. And I'm just going to call this, I could call it cube RB for rigid body. And I'm going to create that. And you can see when I create it, remember, variables are just containers. And that container wants to hold a rigid body, but it has none. It doesn't have any value in it right now. So what I need to do is I need to fill that in. So I'm just going to drag the rigid body from the cube that I want into there. And that's going to allow me to speak to the cube's rigid body. I now have a variable that's assigned the value of the rigid body of the cube so that I can speak to it. So I can just right click in here, drop down variables, get my cube RB. And when I drag off, you'll see under rigid body, there's a bunch of things that I can do with it. I want to add a force. And I'll hook up my execution pins. And I can just add the values I want right in here. X, Y, and Z. X is right and left. Y is up and down. Z is in and out of the screen. And I'm just going to add 50 and see what that does. You remember when I started this, it just dropped straight down. I could make a vector for this force if I wanted to. Call it force. I'm not going to use it yet. I'm just going to see what happens here first. You see that it got poked a little bit to the side. Not much, but just 50 units wasn't really enough to make a big impact. So let's use this vector3 variable that I made, and I'll make it 200. Instead of assigning it, hard coding it there, I'll use this force variable. We'll do 200. There's a little bit more. You can see that it got hit a little bit more to the right. Let's try 500. There's a lot more. It almost tipped over. So what we're going to do with this, now that we've made this and we could see some functionality here, I want to make this a prefab. And since it has this, it's going to copy all of the things we have in here. It's going to copy the rigid body that I put on this. It's going to copy the glyph behavior, the diagram behavior that I put on this. Everything that's on this, I'm going to be able to copy into a prefab. So if I open my prefab folder, I can drag it down into here, and you'll see it goes in there. Now I have a cube, a copying machine, basically, for this. And you see how that cube turned blue up there in the hierarchy. The cube went from black to blue right here. You know that that's a prefab now. And now I can drag this in like a copying machine. And all of these will have the rigid body and the glyph behavior and all the code that I wrote in that. They're all going to have that. So they all should get hit to the side, which they do. And I wouldn't want to have to go into each one of those and recode that for every single one of them. So I do it once in there. And the great thing about it is if I change anything in this base one here, and kind of the parent, it'll propagate that change to all of the instances up there. So cube and then cube 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all instances of that prefab. So if I change something in here, because I have that selected in prefab, or if I change something in here, since this is the base one, you'll see these all will get hit harder. They all got pushed over a lot. I can also, I could change anything I wanted here. I could make them jump up in the air. I could add a value to the Y, 800, and then I don't want them to go as far to the right, so I'll just do 300 here. And they all kind of jump up in the air. So you can see that I can make changes to a lot of things. Once you have a lot of things in the scene that are all instances of this, I don't want to have to go through each of them. So that's why I just change it in the parent or the original prefab, and then it will propagate to all the instances here. Now I can change something in one of these, and it will keep its values here. If I start changing it here, it will kind of disconnect from what the parent is and do its own thing. So if I wanted one to be special and not act like the parent, I can change that, but it will not be the same. You can see that 1 is what the parent had, and the cube with cube 0, we'll call that. So all of these should jump up except that main one, which the main one just got flipped to the right and the rest of them jumped up. You can see that. The main one just to the right and the rest all got pushed up. So if I go back into here, I can have this, the parent, be a completely different one. And since that's changed, I can apply this. I can click apply, and that will make the parent go to whatever instance I had on that. So since I changed cube 0, if I hit apply on that, it then tells the parent, become what I am. Update to what I am. And if I make another change in here, I just added a self-game object node in here. These won't have it because I made it individually in that one. It's its own thing now. It has changed from the parent. And none of these will have it unless I updated the parent and then updated all of those. But I can revert this back to the parent by just hitting revert. And it will say, okay, go back to whatever the original was. So all the changes I made outside of being different from what the original was are going to revert back to that. And that's important because these behaviors are they're not scripts. They're part of the prefab asset itself. So changing these things, reverting and applying, if you make a change or you accidentally change the one in the scene instead of the base prefab, learning how to revert and apply is a good thing. But if you wanted to make changes that went to everything that was in the scene, you would do it in this base, the parent. I call it the parent, but it's kind of the base prefab here. So I'm going to delete all of those, and that's it for prefab. Thank you.